put some cardboard boxes out there and they didn't take them.
Really?
Yeah, I called, he says, they said that COVID lasts up to 14 days on cardboard boxes. You have to cut them up and put them in the can.
I
I'm
didn't
like,
know.
Such crap.
you know,
Well, there's so many things out there masquerading as fact. And, you know, are we on?
Yes,
No.
it says you are,
We're
I
alive.
mean,
that you're
when we go
streaming.
live, I'll stop my commentary. I hope I don't slip when we go live and say the governor is
yeah.
totally
We're
out.
live. We're live on YouTube.
Okay, out of range, let's say.
It's Saturday night.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Morning. Morning. Morning.
I'd like to say it's a lovely day in Berrien County, but I guess if you get above the cloud cover, it is. We'll call the meeting to order. And Bob, I guess you're going to do the invocation, is that right?
That's correct.
And then Terry will do the pledge.
That's
So,
correct.
You're on.
Please join with me. We gathered together today intent on doing good work. We seek to represent fairly and well those who have given us this task. Please allow us the wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, a sense of welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness, confidence in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement. Give us personal peace in our lives and joy in our tasks. Let us also remember those who are no longer with us, our servicemen and women, and also those residents of Berrien County who suffer from the coronavirus. And also please give us the patience to listen to others. Amen.
Amen.
Please join with me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Bob and Terry.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
Elliott,
Here.
Yarborough,
Present.
Harrison,
Here.
Hinkleman. Hinkleman,
I think he said here.
He's
he's
muted.
here.
Yeah.
He's muted. Scott,
Here,
Curran,
I am here.
Meeks,
Here.
Hugo,
Here.
Majerick,
Here.
Chickering,
Here.
Ballrat,
Here.
Freeling.
Here,
Mr. Chair, you have 12 present.
Thank you. 4 present here in the boardroom and 8 present virtually. We've got a full house, so to speak. I know that many of us, maybe all of us, have received numerous communications about RV and I think mobile home parks. I don't think any of those came to the clerk, however. So I am putting mine on a PDF and we'll forward them all to the clerk just so we have them with the clerk's office. I have not responded individually. I thought what I would do is do a response to all of them to acknowledge receipt of their letters and to advise them that the letters have been delivered to the county clerk for filing. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Sharon, with that, did you have any communications?
I have none.
Okay.
Minutes.
The next thing on the agenda is to get an update from Nikki Britton.
What about the minutes?
Oh, I'm sorry, after we approve the minutes. The minutes from the 30th of April, any changes to those? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
This is Michael Majerick. I make a motion that we accept the minutes.
Okay,
Supports?
supported by Hugel
Yes.
or Volrath? Okay, all right, all in favor signify by saying,
Oh, no, we can't.
oh, we gotta do a roll call since it's virtual.
Yarborough.
Mamie?
Yes,
Yarborough.
Okay.
yes,
Harrison.
Yes.
Hinkleman.
Yes.
Scott.
Yay.
Chickering.
Yes.
Walrath.
Affirmative.
Freely.
Yes.
Curran.
Yes.
Hugo.
Yes.
Jarrett.
Yes.
Meeks.
Yes.
Elliott.
See, senor,
Mr. Chair, you have 12 yeas.
thank you. Okay, now we'll get an update from Nikki. I saw her just a second ago,
I'm here.
so I think she's on.
Yep, thank
Oh,
you
there she is.
for having me again. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. They do have some slides here. See if I can, here we go. Okay. So just to start off with some of the numbers that I think you're familiar with, we, as of yesterday, had 425 confirmed cases, 182 presumed cases. Again, these are people that have had COVID-like illness, the symptoms consistent with it, not a laboratory confirmed test, but they have also had a connection to somebody who has been confirmed. We also have 26 deaths, and we have had 272 of the 425 that have been recovered. That means they have made it 3 days beyond the end of their symptoms. That's how we're defining recovered. You'll notice that our presumed cases are not increasing at a very high rate. When we started reporting on those close to a month ago, we were at about 150 of those presumed cases. And that's because testing has become so available that people are able to, if they have symptoms and they have been around somebody who has been confirmed, they do get tested and are likely to be in that confirmed case count as opposed to just the presumed. Last time I spoke with you, I believe that was 2 weeks ago, I did mention that there are certain things that we're watching to keep an eye on just how things are going in the community, how prepared we might be for reopening more sectors of the economy. One of the things that we're looking at, as you're aware, are deaths. So this graph shows the number of deaths based on the day the death happened. That's the blue line. And you can see that it varies a lot. Some days we don't have any deaths, some days we have more. But what this red line shows is this is a 7-day moving average. So it takes the average number of deaths over the previous 7 days and plots that there. And this is helpful to help us see a bit more of a trend on what's going on with deaths, and it helps smooth out some of those spikes you see from just the number. So that's what the two lines are. You can see that there's been more deaths in April than especially the second half of April, especially compared to what we were seeing before. That's to be expected as our confirmed case counts were increasing. We still do not have a day where our 7-day moving average is above 1. So we are not at a point where we are even seeing an average of 1 death every single day. There are some periods where we're getting closer to that, but this is what deaths look like. The next graph that I have here for you, this is hospital admission. So this is another thing we're looking for to measure and understand what's going on in the broader community. People who become ill enough to become hospitalized, that's not something that can be, masked by a testing strategy or lack of testing availability. So knowing who is in the hospital and how many people are being admitted to the hospital on a daily basis is important. This line again is a 7-day moving average. So it takes out some of the day-to-day variability that might happen and shows it over the average of the previous 7 days. So you can see, similar to what we saw with the deaths, which makes sense, there has been a little bit of some higher points. There have been some moments of some steeper increase. And again, this is going from an average of 2 to 3.5 admissions per day. But there have been some moments of some increase. Overall, the trend is relatively flat. Most of our graphs, when we do them by day, you're going to see a little bit of a decrease over time, just because there's sometimes a little bit of a lag in reporting the data. So in a couple days time, it's possible that this will be slightly higher than what it is. But so on the whole, we're not seeing this huge spike in admissions. And we do know that a high proportion of people who are being admitted are people who are residents of long-term care facilities that are experiencing outbreaks of COVID-19. So we're doing a lot of work in long-term care facilities. These are skilled nursing facilities or nursing homes, assisted living facilities, adult foster cares. We're doing a lot of work in these types of settings to try to prevent illness and deaths and transmission. But that is the population that's greatly at risk. And not to say that all of that matters a lot, but being able to differentiate, are the hospital admissions due to a facility outbreak or are they due to community transmission, tells us different things, gives us different bits of information, especially when we think about reopening sectors of the economy. So I think that's an important distinction for us to understand. We're also trying to pay attention to the percent of COVID-19 tests that are coming back positive. We know that our total number of positive cases is continuing to increase, but again, that's parallel to the increased testing that's happening in Berrien County and across the state and the country. So this is showing how many tests that we received results for on a given day, what percentage of them came back positive. And you'll see there is an overall downward trend to where we're seeing fewer and fewer. There are some of these spikes, and on these days, we know that there has been increased testing. So several of our nursing homes have tested all residents and staff in their facilities. And so we've had these massive testing endeavors that have happened, and there might be 200 specimens collected. When 20 of those 200 come back positive in a facility where we know there's transmission ongoing, that does lead to some of these bumps and increases. Now, that doesn't mean that that's not important for us, and we need to do that sort of testing, and it's not that those cases don't matter, but it gives us a different story of what's going on for broader community transmission to be able to distinguish what is happening in our facilities versus what is happening in the community. So these peaks are driven by facility-based testing, and we do expect there to continue to be more facility-based testing as we move forward, based on statewide initiatives as well as local needs. So that's some of the data that we're monitoring. I did mention vulnerable populations, particularly those in nursing homes or other long-term care settings. And I wanted to give you a kind of quick and dirty visual of how we're approaching protecting our vulnerable populations, because that's clearly very important. We know COVID-19, it can cause an asymptomatic course of infection for some people. It could be mild or moderate symptoms for some people that don't need additional healthcare, but we also know that it can cause really serious illness and death amongst some people as well. And so we want to try to make sure that we're protecting our most vulnerable. We're reducing the amount of mortality we're seeing with the virus as much as we can in preventing transmission in those high-risk groups. And we are looking at this in both our vulnerable settings as well as our vulnerable populations. So here we've got listed some of our most vulnerable settings, again, congregate care. So not only is it nursing homes and adult foster care and some of those long-term care, but other congregate settings do include jails, the county jail, shelters, other places where there might be people living in congregate living facilities, migrant workers. in agricultural settings. Those are areas that there's a more vulnerable population. There's a little bit higher risk. It's harder to isolate, and some of the people who are in those settings that are at higher risk of serious illness. So we're looking at where are the high risk populations living in these higher risk, more vulnerable settings. And then beneath that, we're also trying to focus on sick individuals and their contacts. So how do we make sure that sick people are able to be tested so we can accurately know whether it's COVID-19 or something else? There are still other respiratory viruses out there. And how do we focus on that? This is where a lot of the contact tracing efforts and isolation are coming into play. We're putting a significant amount of work here. But then we also know there continue to be broader risks. Not everybody who is in a high risk population is in a vulnerable setting, and not everyone in a vulnerable setting has all of the underlying risk factors. So again, contact tracing, community-based testing. We have some great healthcare partners that are doing more community-based testing. We're working to try to get more community-based testing online. And then the social distancing risk reduction measures that are taken when people are out and as we're trying to open up different sectors of the economy, more workplaces come online, continuing to do the social distancing and the risk reduction practices. It still applies that even if somebody's not at a high risk population, they still are contributing to some of the transmission, and a lot of the transmission that's happening in congregate care settings across the country, across the state, and in Berrien, a lot of that is being driven by people who work in those settings, might be asymptomatic carriers who've gotten it out in the community, and it's now has entered that facility. So even we still have to be mindful of the transmission that is happening in the community, and not, we don't want to relax ourselves into some sort of understanding or thinking that there's a bit of a free pass for me if I don't have the underlying health conditions or I'm not of a certain age, still contributing to that transmission. We have to be mindful of that and have that balance. So that's for our most vulnerable populations. And I've alluded to reopening and what does some of that look like. I want to make you all aware of just some of the work that the health department has been doing. Dan Fetty's team with Community and Economic Development has been contributing to this as well. But we do have Chamber of Commerce from across the county, as well as Connexus and Cornerstone Alliance that have really contributed to this BerrienReopens.org, with the idea of we wanted to have one hub, one place where workplaces and other organizations, as they're thinking about opening back up, as it becomes allowed under the executive orders, to be able to do that in a way that implements the appropriate health practices and safety practices to keep employees as well as consumers safe and healthy, continue to minimize that spread in our community to the extent possible, so that we can continue to protect our most vulnerable while still also trying to get into an amount of activity that we haven't had over the past couple of months. So the health department is continuing to provide some a great deal of technical assistance and some guidance, some translation. There's a lot of really good guidance out there. But trying to translate some of that of what does it mean locally, how will the health department be playing a role or assisting you if you do end up with a confirmed case in your workplace, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of great resources out there for any type of organization that's thinking about opening up and how to make the plans so that you can reopen safely once that is allowable. One last thing I want to share with you about reopening is the framework that we're using for health practices for reopening some of just anything, reopening parts of the economy. And we think about it in terms of this pyramid with distancing and really trying to remove the hazard being the person-to-person potential transmission of COVID-19. So trying to have that distancing be the frontline defense. So continuing to work remotely in any situation where that's feasible, restricting access to common areas, so not having as much mixing of people. Sanitation and hygiene is then that second line of defense. So where people are together, how do we make sure that droplets don't stay on surfaces, that people are washing their hands so that if they do come in contact with the virus, that does not infect them. And then that third line of defense is really contact tracing, isolation, and quarantine. How do we make sure that people who are sick or infectious are not around and not in this mix and continuing to transmit? The health department is playing a huge role here, but there are things that workplaces need to be doing to assist with this process and be active participants in that. And then that fourth line of defense is really access control of who's able to access the facility and different parts of the facility. And really that last line of defense is PPE. And I think that's something that's really important for all of us to keep in mind as we're thinking about reopening, is it's not as simple as put on a mask and you're fine. You really need all of these other measures in place, with that PPE being that last line of defense. And we're really trying to stress that. And I think that's important for all of us to have in mind as we begin to re-engage in some other activities. If we can do all of these things really well, we have a really good chance of maintaining sort of that flattening of the curve and maintaining some protection for our most vulnerable individuals in our most vulnerable settings. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have questions for Nikki?
Yeah, yes, I do. Mamie Yarborough. When you're saying testing is so available, explain how you get tested. I got in a line one time at Intercare. I saw only 4 cars. I thought that was wonderful. I had heard on WSJM morning that you could be tested on M139. You did not have to pay. You did not have to have a doctor's slip. And by the time the lady got through talking to me and telling me why I couldn't do it, she could have done it and had it in the process of being, checked. I told her that my stomach was kind of bubbling. It scared me a little bit. I had been to the eye doctor, and so I just think there needs to be some clear explanation of who can get tested, so that people will not do that and wait in lines and then be turned away.
Yeah, that is a really frustrating process that you're describing, where you expect to be able to be tested and then not be. So I hear you there. So at this point, testing is for people who are symptomatic or have had an exposure to somebody who is confirmed positive. A lot of that is happening at the direction of the health department, because that is happening through our contact tracing. People are being identified as close contacts through the contact tracing. Okay. And even at that point, you do need to wait a period of time. If you've been exposed to a sick individual, and that was only yesterday, there has not been enough time for the virus to amplify or replicate more inside your body, so that there's enough copies of the virus that the test can detect it. So we are instructing people, you have to wait at least 4 or 5 days for a test if you're not experiencing any symptoms yet, but you've had an exposure. Okay. So generally speaking, the testing is available for those who are symptomatic. Testing is so much more available than it was, but it is still not at this level of anyone who wants a test gets a test. Yeah. And there's some amount of understanding of, even if you do get tested and you come back negative, you need to understand that negative doesn't mean that you're now forever certified COVID-free or anything like that. And even by the time you get your negative results, it's possible transmission could have happened or an amplification of the virus. So a negative result is always just about a point in time and doesn't really carry much further. So there is a focus on doing testing in our most vulnerable population and those who are symptomatic and sick.
I thank you so much. And still, Mamie Yarborough, one other question I want to ask is, what is happening with the deceased? What are they doing? What's happening? Are people being buried or cremated, or are they somewhere? What? People ask me that. What are they doing with the bodies?
So it's my understanding that normal final disposition of bodies, like those processes are in place. A cremation is not required. If it's the wishes of that individual or of their family to do a burial, that is absolutely still appropriate. Funeral homes do have extra protections that they are taking in place when they are dealing and working with those who have died of COVID-19. So all of those processes in place. The thing that is most different in this time is just funerals, and funerals should not be happening in person with more than 10 people. So funeral homes need to ensure that that's happening or that that's not happening. There are options that I know people are utilizing for remote participation. Being quite frank, this is just one of the awful side effects of the social distancing and not having that communal opportunity to grieve in the way that makes sense and fits most people's cultures and practices and beliefs, I know is incredibly challenging for our community. And that issue of unresolved grief, I think, is going to be one that we are going to contend with for a while and is going to contribute to some of the mental health and trauma issues that are being exacerbated by this pandemic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nikki,
Yes.
Nikki, a question. Now that the weather has gotten nice, a lot of the snowbirds are starting to come home from Florida, the Gulf Coast, places like that. Two questions. One, is there a protocol for these people coming back into our community from hotspot communities like Florida? Is there a protocol for isolation or something like that? And secondly, I've heard from at least one of these people that they were told by supposedly health officials in Florida that there was no big deal because what you do when you get back home to Berrien County is you just go get yourself tested and then you're fine and you move on with your life. I'm assuming the latter is inaccurate, but I'm interested in what communications we're doing to this group of people coming back home.
So far, I don't believe there has been targeted effort to try to identify, because we don't have a registry of people where this is their second home and when they're returning. That's not a group that we can easily try to target some of that communication. It is allowable for people to return to their home or go to a second home that's in the state of Michigan. And the appropriate thing to do would be to quarantine for 14 days upon arrival to ensure that you are not ill. This notion of coming to the community and being tested sounds good in theory, but to the point I made previously, if you leave Florida on Monday, arrive in Michigan on Tuesday, and then go to be tested on Tuesday, not enough time has passed to know if your last exposure there on Monday resulted in infection. And if you're not symptomatic, and it's less likely you're going to be able to get a test from one of our healthcare providers, because our testing is not unlimited, that just any well person who wants a test can get a test. So there's a little bit of that, and maybe that's how things are in Florida, but that's not how things are here in Berrien County. So when individuals are returning to their homes, we need them to really lay low for 14 days or so they get through that quarantine period, know that they haven't brought anything into our community. We can continue to try to amplify that message through our broader communication mechanisms, but as I said, it's hard to target that when there's just throughout the county.
Other questions?
Yes, Nikki, Commissioner Scott, can we go back and talk about the deaths? You said there's 26 deaths in Berrien County. Would you expound on that? Because if you had a death from someone, let's say, that had stage 4 cancer that was passing, and from my understanding, and maybe you can dispel the myth, if you've got a flu shot or if you've ever had the flu, you're going to have COVID antibodies in your system. Is that correct?
No, the flu shot does not confer, it has nothing to do with COVID immunity. So the flu shot has a piece of some protein particles from the flu virus so that your body will make antibodies to what's contained in that shot. The coronavirus is a completely separate virus. You need exposure to the coronavirus or part of its material to have immunity. So there's no cross immunity between a flu shot and the coronavirus.
Okay, but if, well, I guess what I'm asking is if someone passes away and like I said, let's say they had heart issues or they had stage 4 cancer, if their blood tests come back that show COVID antibodies, they're being listed as a COVID death?
No. So in Berrien County, people are not having routine blood tests that show antibodies. The testing that we're doing in Berrien County is to detect the virus. So, and I think what you're trying to get at is what is the cause of death and how do you define the cause of death? So this is something that is always a bit of an art and science together of what are the underlying causes of death. Even when somebody is extremely ill or terminally ill, depending on what led to the precipitating events that ultimately led to the death, that's how the physician that signs the death certificate determines what the cause of death is. Now, it's very true that there are terminally ill people that are infected by COVID-19, but if COVID-19 is the thing that causes their death, even if they would have died, say, within the next month or so due to their terminal illness, if COVID-19 is the thing that causes their death, that is listed as a cause of death. If they had COVID-19 and then there's some other thing that happens then later, that is not, I mean, that other thing is what killed them. Where this starts to get a little bit murky is that the state is counting anybody who dies within 30 days of having a confirmed COVID test as a COVID-related death. And this is somewhat standard practice. Hospitals, for example, they get their 30-day mortality rate. So if anybody dies within 30 days of being discharged from a hospital or admitted to a hospital, regardless of what they die from, that's what it's counted as a mortality within admission. And so these are some standards across healthcare. It's really hard to really determine, especially in a very sick population, exactly, in some situations, it's hard to know exactly what caused the death. But there is a certifying physician that determines what the cause of death was. And again, even if you were very ill, a COVID-19 infection can be the thing that kills you. HIV in AIDS is an example here. Nobody ever dies of AIDS. You die of an infection that you wouldn't have succumbed to if you didn't have AIDS. So while it's the infection that kills you, it's also an HIV AIDS death. So the lines get a little bit blurry. I can assure you that here in Berrien County, there's no attempt to try to mark up or claim more deaths as COVID deaths. There is no reason or advantage for that to be happening.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
this is Commissioner Freeling.
Okay, okay, sorry.
Can you help? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Nikki, can you help to clarify with regards to the testing? I know that I've been watching the dashboard that's on Spectrum Lakeland's page as well. And on there, it talks about the tests that they have done for their organization. And I know probably in the last 10 days, we've seen a significant uptick in the amount of tests that are being processed. In weeks past, I had noticed we were hovering right around that 100 tests a day in processing. And our cumulative average of positives from those tests were about 5%. Yesterday, we were nearly at 200 tests, and our cumulative was at 10%. And I know that the benchmark from the World Health Organization is that if you're hovering at 10% or less, that we're doing a really good job of flattening the curve and controlling the community spread of the virus. My question to you is, those who are being tested, are those individuals who have been presumptive positive, who have some trace back to someone who is a confirmed test? And would that then somehow make our positives increase at a greater rate because they've already shown symptoms? We already know that there's traceability back to someone who has contact. Or is this general population, like what you were saying to Commissioner Yarbrough, that they have to meet all of those other specifications, but anybody coming in?
Yeah, that's a great observation and point. And what I suspect is that it's actually a third option, or there is a third option and they're contributing to this. And I don't want to get too far outside of my lane and speak for an organization I don't represent or have the inner workings of. But I do know that Spectrum Health Lakeland has been pretty aggressive in testing anybody who comes in for any type of admission. So somebody coming in for any type of elective surgery, whether it's outpatient or inpatient, and not elective, but a medically necessary procedure, not at all related to COVID, those patients are being tested. And this is part of a spectrum-wide, the whole health system based in Grand Rapids is doing this sort of effort. They're doing increased testing of those coming into the hospital. It serves a couple of purposes for them. It does help us do additional surveillance in the community because there are people coming in who are asymptomatic, or they might be pre-symptomatic. That's important to know before you have surgery, because if you're on the brink of potentially an infection, you don't want to also be recovering from surgery. So that's beneficial. It can really help with, you identify somebody who's positive, it can help just many ways with the healthcare delivery. And it does give us a little bit more of a picture because we're doing more testing of what's going on. It is also true that anybody who is associated with our confirmed cases, the health department knows about, and we're directing all of those people into testing. So that is contributing to part of this. There are additional partners in Berrien County that are doing testing now as well. There's the Benton Harbor Walmart, as well as the Rite Aid in Bridgman, I believe, is doing testing starting this week. And there's efforts to try to get some more testing locations in the Niles area. So as we start to have more of these come online, we're just going to continue to do more testing. And the different testing sites are going to have slightly different populations that they're targeting. You'll also see in some of the Lakeland numbers that some of our longer term care facilities are having their testing run through Lakeland. So some of those, when you see that 10% cumulative total and some of that spike, some of that is due to transmission that is in our long-term care facilities as well. So that context is really important. I'm happy to provide that.
Thank you, Nikki.
Any other questions? Other questions?
Thank you all for your support. Really
Nikki,
appreciate it.
Don't go yet.
Okay.
Talk with the group a little bit about herd immunity and how that might, how a protocol for herd immunity might bear on age factors. You know, the vulnerable population, for instance, might be less amenable to herd immunity because for them, it wouldn't just be a matter of building up immunity. They could get very sick or even die. So talk a little bit about herd immunity and how that, in your view, should best be applied.
So herd immunity refers to the percentage of the population. If you think of the people as the herd, so it's the percent of the population that has immunity to the virus. So the virus, and part of why a pandemic spread so quickly is because everybody in the population is susceptible because it's a new virus. So nobody's been exposed to it in the very beginning, and you don't have that immunity. So the virus can very easily, as soon as there's a contact point with another person, that other person is also susceptible, so the virus can more easily be transmitted. But if I'm an infectious person and I have a contact with another person and that person has immunity, that virus can't be transmitted. If I am surrounded by people who are immune and I only have contact with people that are immune, I can't transmit the virus any further. So if the contacts of the people I'm in contact with, they are protected. So even if they are not immune, they're protected by the immunity of my contacts. So generally, it varies from virus to virus as to what level of herd immunity. But if there's a large enough percentage of the population that is immune, that helps stop lines of transmission and reduces the number of new cases any infected person can infect. So in terms of how herd immunity can protect our most vulnerable, if grandma is susceptible to the virus and we know at risk for serious illness or death if she becomes infected, if the people around her are immune and nobody who has contact with grandma is susceptible to the virus, then grandma is susceptible even if she doesn't have immunity. So we see this a lot when we talk about vaccinations and vaccine exemptions. There are some people who, for medical reasons, cannot be successfully vaccinated. It might be because their immune system is unable to produce a robust response. There might be an allergy to something in that particular vaccine. For whatever reason, they can't be vaccinated against measles, for example. So we have people for whom vaccination is medically contraindicated. But if everybody else who can get vaccinated does, and that protects that one person because there are so few paths, transmission paths to that susceptible person. So with COVID-19, because it's a relatively new virus, we know that the vast majority of the we don't have the majority of the population that has been exposed. So there's still tons of susceptible people out there. That's why it's really important that as we begin to reopen certain workplaces and different sectors of the economy, we're going to start to have more of those connections. And a lot of those connections are still going to have very susceptible people along the way. We need to be really cautious about how we're protecting people, how we're trying to limit that. So even if we're having connections and we see each other in the workplace, that's where all that pyramid of controls that I showed you become really important, because that's how people can interact in the same place, but still really reduce that risk of transmission. I know Dr. Johansson was quoting a study to me. They did a study trying to determine what antibody levels were in the general population with some tests. And this is being done for research purposes, but in one of the New York boroughs. And it was something like maybe 27% of the population in the city that's been hardest hit in the United States had some level of immunity. We don't know if it's effective immunity and it will really prevent transmission. That was maybe 27%. So we have to assume that it's less than that here in Berrien County, knowing that we've had just far fewer percentage of our population, even with confirmed cases. So I can't tell you what our herd immunity is right now. We're far from it being able to be protective. We might be further along than we know because it's hard to characterize asymptomatic spread. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Elliott?
Partly, but let me follow up. Recognizing the ongoing need to protect vulnerable population groups, and within that, I'd say the subset of folks who are in long-term care. Is there a mechanism contemplated where we would continue to, in effect, cull the herd and maintain ongoing protection for that vulnerable population, while at the same time recognizing that people under 50, unless they have some significant pre-existing health problems, probably should be out of the corral to build up that herd immunity? Because if we keep them corralled, they're never going to do it. Is there any protocol envisioned along those lines?
So that's what all of
Do you
those,
follow?
sort of. So, I mean, that's what a lot of the practices are in place that I'm describing with the reopening. So we want, none of those things are going to be perfect, and there will be some transmission that happens as we begin to reopen. We've seen this flattening of the curve. My prediction is that as things begin to open up, we're going to see a bit of an increase and hopefully maintain, but just at a bit of a higher level than what we have right now. And it seems like that appears to be a bit of the cost that folks are okay with. There has to be a degree of transmission we're okay with. There isn't really some sort of plan for how do we infect lots of people so that we get to those levels of herd immunity more quickly. And I think in theory, we're trying to keep transmission slow so that we can get to a vaccine. Best case scenario, we could have a vaccine this winter. If everything goes perfectly, by January, we could be vaccinating individuals. So having some of those health practices in the workplace, still continuing to not have large gatherings of people for a while, because that is a high risk activity. Those are all the things that we can do so that we can get to the point of immunity. We've got vaccines that are in development, and even though the vast majority of people who don't have underlying conditions or under a certain age are at less risk, of serious illness and death, that doesn't mean they're at no risk. So if there's a balance here. There isn't exactly a protocol we can apply to try to say all of the people who will just have a mild course of illness will get sick during this time period, and then we'll build that up. We can't apply it quite that way.
Okay. Nikki, I know we had discussion, and we had some in EOC yesterday about continuing to provide information about the ages of those who get sick enough to go in the hospital, as well as on the mortality table, the ages of the people who have died and had their deaths attributed to COVID-19. I know you're going to be doing a briefing tomorrow. Will that information be in that Facebook Live briefing?
No, we generally do not share that level of detailed information in those briefings.
Okay. Can you tell us, for purposes of this briefing, have we had anyone under 50 die in Berrien County from COVID-19?
Yes.
How many?
Generally, when there's less than 5, I don't want to say because it breaches. So less than 5.
Did any of those present with pre-existing health conditions?
Yes.
Did all of them?
I believe so.
Okay. All right, very good. That's all I had. Did anybody else come up with anything while Nikki and I were talking that they wanted to ask Nikki? Mamie?
Yes, Mamie Yarbrough, I just thank you. I thank you for this amount of time, and the things that were asked and that you answered seems to be on our minds. So much we hear, and people ask us things expecting that we know. So I just feel like I'll be better able to answer when they do. And I thank you, Nikki.
Great. And if there are other commonly asked things that you would like information on or some talking points for, please let me know, and we can work to make sure that you're well equipped to handle those communications.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Nikki.
Thank you.
Okay, we're now at the point of public comments regarding resolutions. So that's resolutions on the agenda. Anybody who wants to beam in a comment via YouTube will take a few minutes. to see if anyone has submitted anything. Again, just limited to resolutions on the agenda. What happened?
73, I fell on it playing hockey.
Oh,
And evidently, the bone spur has caused a rub, and it's still a second floor.
Dr. Kevin Hart at Northwestern is who you need to see. Don't recommend that procedure.
I do have one public comment for the resolutions at this time, and that would be from Tony Van Hart from Sodas Township, and he says that the road department Napier Avenue resolution needs to be pulled.
Okay. Well, cool.
And I will check one more time for any others.
All right.
Okay, I believe that we have no more public comments about the resolutions.
All right. On my motion, we'll pull B 2005250 to be read aloud. That's for the gentleman who is the recipient of the donuts today, I believe.
No,
And,
I didn't get it for you.
Okay, well, we'll say that you did.
Okay, fine.
And then there are two added resolutions, 5256 and 5264. One from PHS and then from admin. And then I had flagged 5248, the Napier Avenue one, and had conversation last night on that with the admin chair. Is there any preliminary motion with respect to any of these other resolutions? And like I said, I'm pulling the one on Brian to be read, the honorary resolution.
That is.
Commissioner Freeling,
Yes, ma'am.
I believe that the added resolution 5256 had some questions from corporate counsel. And we do need to pull that one for further consideration to table it until next week.
Table?
Yes.
Okay. Are you making a motion to table 5256?
I am making that motion.
Is there support for that motion to table?
Commissioner, I will support.
Supported by Chickering. We will vote on that by roll call without debate. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yarborough,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Hinkleman,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Chickering,
Yes,
Ballrat,
Dave?
Ballrat. Freeling,
Yes.
Curran,
Dave's like,
Yes.
Bob
Hugo.
Rath on mute. Is that why you couldn't hear him?
he gave us a thumbs up.
Okay.
Hugo,
Yes.
There we go.
Majerick,
Yes.
Dees,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 12 yeas.
Okay, 5256 is tabled. With 5264, that's the other of the added resolutions. This has to do with a request from St. Joseph County, Indiana, for us to make a designation on Mayflower Road north of the state line, really, I think from US 12 to the state line on Mayflower. And that goes in Bertrand Crossing and then makes its way down to the state line. As you may know, if you've traveled on the bypass, 31 bypass, going down to South Bend, there's some construction. And some of the truckers apparently are avoiding that construction by jumping onto Mayflower right before the entrance ramp to the bypass, taking Mayflower down into Indiana, crossing Mayflower at the state line, and then I believe it connects up with Cleveland Road to the east of the bypass. And so then they jump on Cleveland and either take it to the bypass and continue south or go into South Bend. And apparently the St. Joseph County Highway Department does not like that. So they're asking us to prevent it. And this would apply to trucks that aren't on Mayflower to make deliveries or to semis operated by the farmers. When Jim and I talked about this last night, the question came up, has anyone from Bertrand Township weighed in on this? Annette, I know, was trying to track down Steve Hicks, who is the township supervisor. So if it's okay, I'm going to ask Annette if Mr. Hicks had any response on behalf of the Bertrand Township Board.
So I did reach out to Michael Yingling last night, and he had said that he had spoken to him previously a little bit back, and he's going to do that again. But we do have Kevin Stack on Zoom in our meeting. If you had some other questions for him, he'd be more than happy to respond to that.
All right.
Kevin?
Commissioner Elliott, I just wanted to correct a little bit of that. This will be Mayflower Road from the state line to Bertrand Road. Just this small section right here. This road is not built to handle the commercial traffic that it is seeing. We have talked with St. Joe County, and they have no truck signs posted on their side. And this is kind of to help our road because we have trucks doing U-turns right at the state line, tearing up the road. So that's kind of a conjunction effort with St. Joe, Indiana.
Is that part of Mayflower a 4 or 5 inch asphalt base? Is that what you're running there?
No, what we're running there actually is a grind gravel prime and double seal. So you're looking at about 3 to 6 inches of gravel with about 1 inch of seal coat.
Okay, so you understandably don't want semis running on that.
Preferably no.
Okay, all right. And has the township board had any recent comments to make, or have you been designated to do so on behalf of the Bertrand Township Board?
We're able to do so. However, we've had several conversations with Bertrand Township. They've actually expressed this concern well before the construction has started because of the new Amazon and FedEx facilities that are creeping towards the state line. They have already expressed concern about this and have asked for an answer. So they're more than willing to be on board with this.
Is the motor carrier division going to assume enforcement responsibility, or would this fall on the Berrien County Road Department?
Our weighmaster will have full jurisdiction down there to stop trucks, weigh them out, and ticket if necessary.
How long would it take you to get signage posted?
Well, if the rain stops, I could have them up today if you approve it.
Okay, all right. Any questions for Kevin? is there anyone who wants to pull that, or do you want to leave it on the consent calendar for immediate action this morning?
Lee,
Bill
I'd like
says
to-
leave it. Bill,
I'd like to leave it.
maybe? Okay.
Go ahead
Let's
and,
put it this way. Is there anyone who doesn't want to take action today on 5264? Silence means you do want to take action today. Okay. All
Mr.
right,
Chairman?
we'll leave that on the consent. Yes, Jim.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent calendar with the exclusion of Resolution A 2005248, B 2005250, and P 2005256, including the added Resolution A 20052.
Okay. Well, we've already tabled 5256, so you don't need to do anything with that. So let's consider your motion to be a motion to approve the consent calendar without the honorary resolution ending in 5250 and without the resolution ending in 5248, which is the Napier Avenue resolution. Would that be correct?
And I included 5256 because it's on the added resolution, but it was tabled.
Okay. All right, so you're, are you wanting to move 5256 forward today?
Yes.
Because it's already been tabled.
No.
It wasn't?
Mayflower, the 6-4.
Oh,
264.
He wants to move it from added to consent.
all right, Terry, did you ask to table 5256?
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Added to the motion.
That is correct.
Okay, so that's tabled. Jim,
Correct.
are you wanting to bring that back?
No, my motion
Okay.
is to approve the consent calendar excluding those, because that one had been tabled.
Okay.
5248 and 5250 had also been pulled.
Right,
I left 5264 in the consent
got it.
calendar.
Okay, just to make sure I muck it up a little more. We're not going to vote on 5248, we're not going to vote on 5250, and we're not going to vote on 5256, but everything else is on your motion to be approved this morning.
On the
That is,
consent.
On
that
the
is
consent
correct.
calendar.
That is
Okay.
correct.
And is there support?
Commissioner Scott will support.
Supported by Scott. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Yarborough,
yes,
Harrison,
Yes.
Hinkleman,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Chickering,
Yes.
Ballrat,
I reckon so.
Freely,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Hugo,
Yes.
Najarick,
Yes.
Meeks,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 12 yeas.
Thank you. The next thing is the honorary resolution. And I have one stapled in the packet. I assume somewhere nearby is one that is going to be signed by everyone at some point. Just not today. So it's kind of like when someone says, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. Or the check's in the mail.
But not at this time.
Right. And with that understanding that it was done simply based on overriding circumstances, not a lack of desire on the part of any board member to sign it, I'm going to read it, and consistent with social distancing, I will shake your hand from about 10 feet away. And then maybe we'll take two pictures and put them together. cut and paste or whatever they call that. So, I find myself more and more looking at when people came on board. I remember when Brian was hired, at that time Randy Rood was the director of the park system. And we were working with Harry Gast to get a grant through the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund for some beach property, Silver Beach. At the time, it was owned, I believe, by LECO. And Bob Warren was running LECO, and Bob was irritated with the city of St. Joseph. That happens, not just the city of St. Joseph. People get irritated with each other, with municipalities from time to time. But it prompted him to come to the county and say, how would you like Silver Beach? And I think the asking price was $4.25 million. Think about that today, 30 years later, and what that means to us in terms of benefits for the city as the host of that property, tourism, economic activity, you name it. But we had to get about $3 million through the Department of Natural Resources Trust Fund, the CAM Trust Fund, I believe, KAMM. Senator Gast was instrumental in doing that. Randy got a lot of credit as well for working on that in 1991 and into 1992 when it got finished, but it started in 1990. And one of the people who jumped in and was pulling on the oars to help make it happen was Brian Bailey. He had a lot of paperwork to do. And we did not have internet then. We did not have a relational database. We had a lot of information on 3x5 index cards, and we had this gadget that had come into existence a few years earlier called a fax machine. And we could FedEx stuff back and forth to Lansing, but his name doesn't appear anywhere. There's no plaque that thanks Brian for all of the work he did to help us get that $3 million to close the deal on Silver Beach. But since I happen to have been around then, I wanted to make note of it. So with that, I'll read the resolution that we will all in due course be signing. Berrien County Board of Commissioners Resolution B 200-5250, May 14, 2020. Whereas Brian Bailey has called Michigan his home his entire life, and whereas following his high school graduation in Lansing, he went on to earn a bachelor's degree in Parks and Recreation Administration and a master's degree in Public Administration, both from Western Michigan University. And whereas his career in Berrien County began in 1990 as the temporary assistant park manager at Madeline Bertrand County Park. And whereas he was promoted throughout the years and became the Berrien County Parks Director in 2008, although he still continued to manage Silver Beach through 2013. And whereas under the direction and leadership of Brian Bailey, the Berrien County Parks and Recreation System has expanded and evolved into the nationally recognized award-winning system that we have today. And whereas specifically as director, Brian was the leader throughout 3 5-year plans, the acquisition and opening of Galene River County Park, the acquisition of donated land for the growth of Love Creek County Park, the acquisition and opening of the Paw Paw River County Park, and adding the historic Courthouse Square County Park into the park system. all while continuing improvements were made to other county parks. And whereas Brian has exhibited the mission of Barron County to provide leadership, cooperation with all units of government, sound fiscal management and planning, thereby promoting public safety, health, well-being, and prosperity in order to improve the quality of life for present and future generations. Now, therefore, be it hereby resolved that the Barron County Board of Commissioners acknowledges the dedication of Brian Bailey for his tireless efforts to better the Barron County Parks and Recreation System for all citizens to enjoy, and thanks him for 30 years of service. Be it further resolved that Brian Bailey's life, actions, and contributions reflect most favorably upon himself, his family, the Barron County Parks and Recreation System, or Commission rather, the County of Barron, the State of Michigan, and the United States of America. Is there a motion to approve that resolution?
Support.
Moved by Meeks and supported by Chickering. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
Probably we all have great things to say about Brian because with his guidance and leadership, the Barron County Parks system has been built into one of our best assets and one of the state of Michigan's best assets for tourism and for our own residents. Brian has had great vision in terms of moving our parks forward, growing our parks, creating diversity in our parks, whether it's historical things or it's kayaking or it's bird watching, whatever it is, we've got a park for everyone to enjoy. And his leadership, his constant drive to grow and improve our park system is a reason we have such a great system. So I don't think any of our residents or any of us can ever truly thank Brian enough for what he's been able to achieve over his 30 years with us. I think that it's a shame that given the lake levels and all of that, some of our parks are much smaller today than they were when Brian acquired them and grew them. But they're there and they will come back and they'll be wonderful assets, again, for Barron County. I think the thing, my 5.5 years working with the Parks Board, is that Brian is an excellent leader in terms of getting the cooperation of a broad variety of our citizens through that Parks Board. And he does it in the best way possible. Brian is one of the nicest people you'll ever want to meet. There's always a smile on his face. There's always warmth in his handshake, even from 10 feet away. He goes out of his way to be the face of Barron County, and it's a very pleasant and positive face. And that element of his personality is especially important to what we've been able to achieve. So while we're not done seeing that face for a little while, it's one that we can all seal into our memories as one of the reasons we've got great parks. So Brian, on behalf of myself and I'm sure others here, thank you more than you'll ever understand.
Thanks, Jim. Any other comments? Mamie?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to say that I am a member of the Barron County Parks Board. Excuse me. I'm a member of the Barron County Parks Board, and I am so thankful to know Brian, and the compliments and the things that Bill Chickering was saying is just what I was thinking, is how well he has gotten along with all entities and groups, and there are things happening at our parks that we never thought of, but he thinks this will work, let's try it. We have fat wheel bikes riding in at Love Creek. We have new properties and signs and things at Madeline Bertrand Park. Rocky Gap has become just a premier beach with the things that he's done. And I'm always asking, will there be toilets? And he's always working on making those kinds of things happen with the grants that we can get, the extra little pavilion that he built, had built at, was it Silver Beach? I just think of millions of things and how many times I end up at the beaches and the parks where I normally would not have gone. I'm not a swimmer, but I love being by the water. And so he has put beautiful things, right into our community, and it's so easy to get to. So I'm gonna miss him. And I look forward to seeing him at the things that he has created and done. And I believe with our Parks Board and with our Parks employees, it seems to be just an excellent relationship. And so I'm so thankful to have worked with him. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to add? Dick Schenkel had contacted me a couple of days ago and said that he was going to send in a letter on behalf of the Parks Board. I've looked through my packet once. I'm looking through it again, but it may not have made its way in here. I'm going to look on my phone and see if it might be on there. Kind of like all those letters from the RV people that got sent to our email addresses, but not in here. So bear with me just a second so I can see if that letter from Dick is on my personal email or county email. And I'm going back into Sunday and I'm not seeing it there. Let me look on my personal. Nope, I don't have it. Brian, we'll make sure that we make that part of the record once it shows up. And I don't know if you were aware that he was doing that.
No.
But I wouldn't expect there were any complaints in it. So with that, will the clerk please call the roll?
Yarborough,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Hinkleman,
Yes, yes, yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Chickering,
Most certainly.
Walrath,
Yes.
Freely,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Hugo,
Yes.
Majerick,
Yes.
Meeks,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, you have 12 yeas.
that is a unanimous approval. It'll be the first time we've done a standing ovation this way, but you'll join me.
Shouldn't we at least have them on camera while we applaud them? Should just turn and look.
Right now you're decapitated.
Thank you all very much. It's truly been an honor to serve this board and the citizens of Berrien County, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. Well done.
Thank you.
Enjoy your retirement, Brian.
Okay. Next,
Resolution page.
4-8.
The name.
5248.
we pulled the one on Napier. That would involve state funding to turn that stretch of Napier, I believe, from Colfax to the bridge by the hospital into a 2-lane road with a center turn lane.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's Colfax to Union.
Colfax to Union.
This is all pieces.
Okay. But with the process eventually getting to the river, to the bridge?
Yeah, there's different phases, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, excuse me. Yeah, I think that
When
first
Jim and I
one,
talked,
yeah, oh, excuse me.
go ahead, Mimi.
I think
Go
the
ahead.
first one was approved, but it hadn't been done yet. From the hospital to the bridge. Isn't that so? We've already approved it. We approved it last year, but they didn't get it going.
You know, Bill?
Yeah.
I know one phase was approved, but they didn't get it underway, and I think it's just starting now, so.
Kevin is still on.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So this is the next, another section.
Okay, well, the two commissioners, actually, there's 4 commissioners that are within sight and sound of this, Bill, Chris, Mimi, and Don. How do you feel about it?
If I could correct one thing you said 2-lane, it's 3-lane.
Well, the center-
But it's going to, at Colfax, it's gonna remain 5 lanes like it is today. The width of the pavement is exactly as it is today. Remember, we've talked about this for 2.5 years. They're going to stripe it for a 3-lane, but they're not doing, and the curbs are gonna stay exactly where they are. So there is nothing that's being done that can't be undone if 3 lanes causes unnecessary congestion. But it's very consistent from where we were 3 years ago.
All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question. This discussion occurred so long ago. I'm trying to see if I recall it correctly. Did we talk about a pilot program? About restriping it for 3 lanes and trying that as a pilot to see how it worked? Or am I confusing that with Red Arrow?
No,
It's the same.
it's the same. That's what I understood also, Jim, that was going to be restriped and then it was going to be checked out and seeing the traffic patterns, whether there were any accidents, whatever, and they were gonna do that for a year before deciding whether or not to leave it 3 or to keep it at 4.
On Napier Avenue or Red Arrow Highway? Which are you talking about, Ezra?
Napier.
No, Napier.
Okay,
That
Okay.
was for Napier. And my only question is here, if we're adding on to the end of that and going further down Napier, and this is state of Michigan federal funds, is that same thing going to happen? What would happen if we decided for the first part of it to take it back to 4-lane and not 3-lane? But then all of a sudden, from Colfax to Union, it becomes 3-lane. You see what I'm saying? Because we're using state money. If the state decides, and you know that, if the state decides to leave that 3-lane, they're gonna leave it 3-lane. So that would be my only question. Does that force us?
Kevin Stack.
Well, I believe it probably belongs to the county. So I don't know if the state is gonna make a ruling on that road. But I'm in support of the 3-lane.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna tell you a couple reasons why. The first reason, basically, there's 3 schools in that area. There's no sidewalks. There's a kid that's been hit by a garbage truck. It's really, and there's other, number 2, there's other ways around. I mean, we can bypass that road. This is a neighborhood. Now they're going 40, 50, 60 miles an hour in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I don't think that's safe until they have sidewalks to make it safe. That's my feeling on it, so.
Bill.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from Kevin because there's a real confusion about this. My recollection that the work in St. Joe Charter Township from the river to Colfax, that section of road was supposed to have been done last year. But because of Reith Riley and a lot of other things, the work didn't get done. So that's one project I'd like to know about because the Union project, the one in this resolution, was supposed to be an extension of the,
Previous.
the western part of Napier Avenue. And these things look like they're getting all bundled up in some crazy way, and I think Donnie's right. We gotta know how this thing's gonna work. We can't have 3 lanes going to 4 lanes, going to 3 lanes, going to 4 lanes. So if Kevin can make sense of this, it would help me a great deal.
Before we get to Kevin, any other board members? Hold on, Kevin, just 1 second. Anybody else who normally sits at this table have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Mamie Yarbrough. I think with the study, it's too bad that the other part had not been done so that we could see how that was working. I think I have a question. The question is, when you get to Colfax, from the bridge to Colfax, there are a number of lanes for you to turn right, to turn left, to go straight. Will that be more lanes than 3 or just 3? By the same token, when you get
My understanding is it's going to funnel back open at the intersection, but Kevin could address that.
All right. And the same way from Napier, Colfax to Union, will it split like that again to go left, right? That's Toyota's right there, left and right and straight through. Those are my questions. Why they're there.
Okay. All right.
But with the number of
Anybody
years
else?
we've been doing this, I'd like to see it happen. Try it.
All right. Kevin, and I see your assistant standing behind you. Go ahead.
Yeah, so just to kind of recap everyone's questions there, you are correct. There was a Napier project from the river to Colfax Avenue scheduled for last year as a federal aid project. That project got delayed due to the Wreath and Ride lockout. So that project has currently been rescheduled to start after July 4th of this year. That will be about a 3 to 4 week project. The reason we push that to after July 4th is I want warmer temperatures on that road. Since it is such a highly traveled road, I want that asphalt to be in the best condition we can to get it placed. The reason for the warmer temperatures are we are doing an innovative design on this as far as putting a road fabric down in between 2 layers of asphalt to reduce the amount of time that the reflective cracking comes through from the concrete pavement underneath. So that's kind of our innovative design that's going to be happening after July 4th. The next project that you are looking at currently from Colfax to Union, and I clarify it's about 450 feet east of Union up to the concrete joint of the approach to M139 is where the limits will be. This will be pulling off about 2.5 inches of asphalt, redoing concrete joints that are bad to get them in good shape, then putting a small inch layer of asphalt on top of that, putting our road fabric down, and then putting the final 1.5 inch lift on top of that. All the drainage structures, making sure everything is up to date the best we can. Now, the 3-lane section, yes, it will be 3 lanes. However, the intersections of Colfax and Union will look identical to how they do today. They will remain 5 lanes, allowing lane in each direction. And then what we are still looking at is the potential we can keep them 2 lanes through, or we can take the outside lane and make it a right only. So you'll have a designated right-hand turn lane, a through lane, and the intersections will not get any smaller coming through there. Everything else will remain 3 lanes. If you look at it now, if you drive it now, you'll notice the tapers that happen from those intersections, which are 5 lanes, down to the road, which is 4 lanes. That's a pedestrian or non-motorized vehicle that needs to travel that way, provide them a level of safety. Now, to go back to Commissioner Meeks's comment, as far as sidewalks, there is a confirmed federal aid project for, I believe it's 2022 in St. Joe Township to put sidewalks on each side of Napier Avenue from basically Miami to Colfax. So that's kind of the gist of how both of these projects come together. Now back to Commissioner Chickering. The first project that was delayed from last year is going to happen first. That one will happen first. The one that you are looking at now, this is the contract between us and MDOT. This project has not been advertised or awarded yet. When it does, I have specified a start date no sooner than Labor Day for two reasons. One, you're going to see obviously our project start here shortly. And two, we're working with Benton Township with a water main issue on Napier Avenue that they have to address at Colfax intersection. So prior to us putting the final pavement on there, we want them to tear it up first. So we're not going back and cutting brand new asphalt to get a water.
Okay. It's good.
Hopefully that clears everything up.
Any other questions? Bill Chickering here.
You cleared up everything and it was well laid out. All along. Sidewalks are what's needed, but there doesn't seem to be any connection between the work you're doing now and the subsequent sidewalk work in 2022. And my fear is that, yeah, you're gonna diet these roads and open a wide shoulder, but that is maybe more dangerous to non-motorized traffic than what's there now. What kind of barriers are you gonna put along those roads to protect pedestrians and non-motorized traffic?
So there will not be a barrier except for your simple white line between that outside traffic, which to now you have people in the traveling lane. So that's what we want to get them out of, is get them out of that travel lane and into a designated shoulder where vehicles are not traveling. Yes, it is still close. It's probably not going to be comfortable for a Sunday stroll with your family and your 2-year-old toddler to walk that on a stroll. But it is going to provide for the daily non-motorized people who are out there that we see on bikes, on scooters that, you know, are well below the rated speed limit, or even your occasional walker, gets them out of the goat path and onto the paved shoulder. Now, when that sidewalk comes in, that sidewalk's going to be designed at about 5 feet wide and is going to handle your foot traffic. It's not going to be very convenient for your non-motorized bicyclist who's traveling anywhere between 5 and 15 miles an hour to be cruising up on that sidewalk. So this gives them an area for that bike to ride on the road outside of the main travel way to remain safe.
Any other questions?
I have a major comment. Do you anticipate that the traffic will slow the traffic down that area because of the reduction in lanes, which would means less traffic?
So what we always caution this is people going, oh, so you're going to reduce the speed limit. No, we're not going to reduce the speed limit on Napier, but a road diet has been proven to be a natural traffic calming fix. So when you put in a car or a person in a car and put them in a tighter environment, they naturally don't feel as comfortable and want to slow down, giving you that slower speeds. Not going to say it's going to happen as it is 40 miles an hour out there right now, but it will be a little bit more calming for motorists and not people trying to do 55 to pass somebody before they get to the next road where they want to turn. So it will be a safety factor that will come in with that 3 lanes, not only for the non-motorized traffic, but also for the motoring traffic.
Other questions, Mamie?
Chairman, Mamie Yarborough, at Airplane Junior High School, there is a speed limit of 25. A number of years ago, we worked on that. And it's from, I don't know where it stops, maybe before Broadway or a little bit past Broadway. But from Colfax to maybe Broadway, it's 25 is the speed limit because of the school. Is that so, Jason? Are you, Kevin, familiar with that?
I will have to look to see what the updated traffic control order is.
Yeah,
right
it could be different, huh?
Most school zones, if are designated a school zone, we will have a flashing light with 25 miles an hour meeting during school hours. It will be, other than that, it will be maintained at its 40 mile an hour, but we'll double check on that to make sure.
Thank you. It never had a light. There was never a light there, but I was maybe on the school board or a county commissioner, I can't remember it, but there is a sign there. Oh,
Kevin, I have a question. Do you have any data that addresses when a 4-lane is converted to a center turn with a single traffic lane in opposite directions?
I do.
Is any data, well, let me finish before try to narrow the question a little bit. Any data that pertains to people attempting to pass in the center lane, what prevalence there is of that when this type of change is made?
So I do have binders behind me that are studies done by the Michigan Department of Transportation of this exact design, 3-lane to 4-lane or 4-lane to 3-lane conversions. There are ones that have failed, and you're exactly right of why. And that's because they're done in high-speed environments where the speed limit may be 55, 60 miles an hour, and you put that down to 3 lanes and you get that person doing 25, and technically you cannot pass in a center turn lane. That's where you're going to get that road aggression, and someone is going to. Out here in Napier with our slow traffics and our short distances and the environment around the road being urbanized, I don't see there's a potential for that unless it is some person who wants to just break every law that is out there. But moving forward, we have done multiple studies on this section. We actually have traffic simulators of the proposed traffic volumes out there now and 20 years in the future, showing us that there is very, very little noticeable delay that a motorist is going to see in this section of roadway. And as far as people trying to pass in the center lane, you're not going to feel comfortable doing that because I think you're going to have enough traffic trying to make a left-hand turn. There's going to be a car in there most of the time.
And that's the concern. And people don't stop and think, even now, when they can legally pass. Oftentimes, they just get to the red light sooner, and that car that they pass pulls up next to them in the other lane a few seconds later. They really haven't gained anything. But the impatience factor is of concern. I've been on that road 3 times this week. I'm on it every week. And I've been paying more attention to it of late. And the people fly down that stretch, Colfax to the light by the old golf course. They just fly. And oftentimes they fly to beat somebody to that red light only. So the concern that I have going forward is that once they get used to flying, they just want to keep flying, even though it means they're passing on the equivalent of a double yellow. So I guess we won't know until the experiment runs its course, but that's my concern.
So to address that concern a little bit more, along with this project, it's been in place for a couple of years, even though it may not see like it. The lights down the corridor do communicate with each other as far as moving those vehicles without stopping. We are currently looking at upgrading those signals to where we can sit here and I'll be able to pull up the cameras in my office and watch traffic patterns and adjust timing from here if need be. For some reason, if there's a incident where they have to get to the hospital or EOC deems an emergency route down Napier, we'll be able to control those light timings from our office. So we are putting measures in place to monitor that to make sure that there's no issues with the motoring traffic.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there a motion to move forward with resolution 5248?
Commissioner Siegel will make that motion.
Commissioner Harrison supports it.
Moved by Hugel, supported by Harrison. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, the clerk please call the roll.
Yarborough,
yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Hinkleman,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Chickering,
Yes.
Walrath,
Yes.
Freeling,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Hugo,
Yes.
Majerick,
Yes.
Neves,
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, you have 12 yeas.
motion carries. Does the Finance Committee wish to report, Madam Chair?
Yes, thank you. Mamie Yarborough. We opened bids today, and Sherry Vance is our purchasing person that works with that. And what we had bids come in for was for Hickman Park Hills 1 and 2, and it's through the road department. And the bids that we received were Kalen for $256,753, for Reith Riley, $229,890.25, and Michigan Paving for $600,000. Those bids were we voted them and accepted them, and they're turned over to the road department for them to look at them and to deal with it. We did, the road department worked on an amended budget, and the staff that was there was Jason, Carrie, and Kevin. And we asked questions and they explained things to us really well. One of the things that I wondered was what was their fiscal year? Because when we took over the Berrien County, when we created the Berrien County Road Department, they were on a different year. And it took about 2 years, Director Latham told us, but now they're on January to December. And so that makes all the things that we as a county do and the road department right in line. And I'm just trying to see what else. They talked about, they've been doing a lot of work. They have not had to stop. They're using more vehicles because what they're doing is having one driver per truck to work within the safe distance, and they're, valuing and working within those COVID directives, but continuing to be able to do paving. They wanted us to know that the work they were doing on Napier at Crystal Avenue, it was working on a light, that work is completed. It's right there at the edge of Crystal Springs Cemetery, Home Depot Road, that is completed. And they've been working on shoulders, and it was asked, they're able to do about 60 miles of shoulder, and if you double that, because they do both sides, about 120 miles of shoulders. So the work is continuing to go on, and there's a lot of work needed in culverts, and that's one of the places that they're really paying attention to. So that's my report, our report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the Finance Committee? Does anyone have any reports then that they wish to make? Even though by and large, none of your committees have been meeting, but does anybody have any report?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
this Commissioner Curran, I just want to let the board know that through the EOC, we're constantly evaluating, the information that's available to us. And as this pandemic progresses, we have scaled back our briefings. The executive officer briefings are now once a week. The EOC full staff briefings have been reduced back to once a week. And the municipal briefings are still continuing, and they always have been once a week. So we're going to continue to evaluate and see if those weekly briefings are sufficient. And if they are, we'll stay with that. If they need to be extended out, or we don't need to meet once a week, we'll make those adjustments. But we're still meeting, but we're now down to one meeting a week.
Thank you. Anyone else? Bill, you have anything?
No report, Mr. Chairman.
We are now close to the end. General
That's right.
public comments will be, oh, yes, sir.
While
Jim?
you're waiting for public comments, I should also mention that today at 3:30, Commissioner Freeling, Commissioner Scott, and myself will be participating in the broadband meeting with Johnny Goff.
Okay. I hope you'll have a good signal.
Hope so.
Okay. Great. Let's wait and find out if we have any general public comments.
I will say, before we try to feed these in, that I did have some public comments while Nikki Britton was speaking. My response to the individual's comment was that we don't really offer an opportunity for the public to question our speakers, but that I would try to get them an answer. I did forward those questions to Jillian and to Nikki in case they wanted to respond. But our general public comments.
While
Mr.
you're
Chairman?
doing that. Yes, sir.
I noticed that Annette's microphone is muted, and I'm having a little difficulty hearing her, but I'm sitting outside in the rainstorm, so, you know, maybe everybody else can hear her okay, because I'm picking her up on someone else's computer or microphone. Can she try unmuting?
I muted because if I have my computer on and the room on at the same time, we get a lot of feedback, and that's the reason why I do that. Is it better if I just need to speak up louder?
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, I have comments from Tony Benhart from Sodus Township. I understand that Allegan and Van Buren have accepted a grant loan for high-speed internet. I wonder why Berrien is not included due to all the work that our commissioners have done and the money spent adds to this project. Why was Berrien left out of the agreement for this needed project? And he had a comment about Niles Road by the cemetery. People pass in that turning lane all the time. That's the end of Tony's comments, I believe. Okay, I don't believe I have any more.
All right. Other business.
Mr. Chair, I have one thing. Every week that goes by, I think we need to discuss what we're going to do. Are we going to put a suspension or a freeze on new hires? And also, would that also mean putting a temporary freeze on temporary hires? I don't want this thing to get behind us. I would like for us to be proactive on this and to get out in front of it, because we can do something to save us some money right now. It would be better to be proactive in this rather than having to furlough or lay people off in the county. I think we need to have this discussion on what we are going to do.
Okay.
I agree.
Anyone else out there want to weigh in? Meaning board members? Bill, Wolf?
Well, and you signed the postings, Mr. Chair, so well, I can tell you about the postings. There are very few occurring right now. There's a lot of stability in the organization, and we have not 100% eliminated part-time people coming on board, but generally speaking, we're not filling any of our part-time positions right now. So it really isn't a big issue. When you look at the longer term, if you start talking about a hiring freeze, I can tell you in my experience that that's not worth the time to be considered, because all employees their responsibility to not create equal, and the moment you put that down, you're going to be working on an exception basis, because there are some positions that absolutely have to be filled. For instance, how would you like to have a conversation with the sheriff if you don't let him hire a patrolman to replace? They will not end well. But like I said, we have stability. It's really not a question right now. When it comes to the issue of the finances for the county going forward, there is so much occurring right now. In fact, there's a new estimate came through this morning. The state's general fund is expected to lose $1.4 billion. Well, you can convert that back, but we don't know how those cuts are going to be spread across the state, whether counties are going to take the hit, whether cities are going to take the hit. You can pretty much assure yourself they're not going to be spread evenly, but it is way too early to try to assess the financial issues that are facing us, at least in a particular sense. And maybe in a couple weeks, more will be known, but as it stands right now, estimates are extremely shady from the county standpoint, because you also don't know that when the doors open, when the doors will open is the first question. Secondly, when they do open, are we going to have a surge of people making up for lost activity over the past couple of months? I mean, you can case by case probably make a decision one way or the other. I guess my answer is that at this point in time, you really do not know what the impact is going to be. Again, I should mention, a word came out today that there is the state Senate has just, the feds have approved $550 million or something for distribution to the states. And some of that's going to be filtering down to the state of Michigan, some of it for first responders. So just in the last 24 hours, the financial picture has changed considerably. So it's a good discussion of what's going to happen up the road, but I think it's premature to get too specific as to what the county's actions should have to be.
Okay, any other comments? Understood everything that's been said. And we are being deliberate when it comes to new hires. Normally I initial those, but I am aware, and haven't seen one in about a month. So with that, still under other business, next week we will be doing an interview, a candidate for Bill's job, and as soon as we have confirmation that his current employer is aware that he has applied and has been identified as someone that we want to interview, then we can release his name. I would anticipate that we would have that information in time to have the name on the agenda for the 21st, because we are meeting next week, and that we would tentatively schedule the interview for 11 a.m. on the 21st. And this is consistent with discussions that I've had with you individually, and that we've had informally in small groups over the last few weeks. So with that, I don't know of any announcements or reminders. Does anybody have anything? Yes, ma'am, Amy?
Amy Yarbrough, do we have a finance committee meeting?
Finance committee?
As of right now, you don't have any bid openings for next week. So unless something else is to come up, I don't think that you will have a reason to meet.
Thank you.
For what that's worth.
Thank you.
I haven't heard anything about administration or personnel, human services wanting to meet, but of course, if they do, the suggestion would be to convene those meetings at 9:30 to provide plenty of time to get done, because we'll plan to queue up and start at 10:30. With that, if there's nothing else, we stand adjourned to next Thursday at 10:30.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Stay safe.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Good to see you.
Good to see you.